The great alien palace was never silent. Servants rushed through the long halls, armored guards stood tall at every door, and the sound of power hummed in the air. But tonight, the silence was different. It was heavy, cold, and full of fear. At the center of the palace sat the alien queen, ruler of an empire feared across the stars. Her name was whispered in every world, her armies unmatched, her laws unquestioned. She was known as ruthless, unshaken, and fierce. But now, for the first time in memory, her hands trembled. Her daughters were gone. 2 young princesses, the only blood she loved more than power, had vanished from their chambers. The guards who stood watch claimed they saw nothing, heard nothing. But the empty beds told the truth. Someone had stolen the most precious lives in the empire. The queen rose from her throne, her tall crown glinting in the dim light. Her voice cracked through the chamber like thunder. "Find them, search every corner, every shadow, every star." Her generals dropped to one knee, their heads low. "Yes, my queen," they said, but their voices shook. They feared her fury, almost as much as the enemy who had dared to do this. The search began instantly. Hounds with sharp claws sniffed the palace floors. Hunters soared into the night skies. Ships left the docks with their engines burning bright. But nothing was found. It was as if the princesses had vanished into the void itself. The queen walked into her daughter's chamber. She touched the small toys scattered on the floor, the warm blankets still carrying their scent. Her breath grew heavy. For all her power, all her armies, she could not protect them in that moment. And then, something strange, a trail, faint but clear, leading beyond the palace gates. Her hunters followed it, past the great walls, past the crowded city, past the borders of her empire. "Where does it lead?" she asked, her voice sharp as a blade. One of her scouts bowed low. "My queen, it leads to the wilderness, to the far edges of the galaxy, perhaps even to human territory." The chamber went still. Every alien in the room froze. The word carried weight, human. They were a mystery, a danger, and yet many saw them as weak, a race that survived more by chance than strength. The queen's eyes burned like fire. "If a human has touched what is mine, they will learn what it means to suffer." Far from the palace, under the open sky of a distant world, a campfire burned quietly. A human man sat near it, tired from his day's hunt. His life was simple. He lived alone. His home was a small wooden hut, his days spent gathering food and surviving the wild. He did not know that the galaxy trembled because of him. From the shadows, 2 small figures crept closer. Their feet were bare, their faces pale from fear. They had run far, too far for their young age. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, and their tiny hands clutched each other tightly. The man looked up. His eyes widened. 2 alien children, trembling, stood just outside the firelight. Their strange eyes glowed faintly in the dark, their breaths fast and shallow. "Hey," the man whispered softly, not wanting to scare them. "It's okay. Come closer. You're safe here." But the girls did not move. They stood frozen, watching him. Their world had been palaces and guards, not a lone stranger in the wild. Yet when the cold night wind blew harder, they couldn't resist. Step by step, they came closer. The man offered them bread from his pack. Their hands shook as they took it, biting quickly like they hadn't eaten in days. Then, to his surprise, they moved even closer, until one rested against his arm and the other curled up against his chest. The human froze. He had never seen anything like this. Why did they trust him? Why were they here? Above, in the stars, the Queen's ship spread across space searching. Her fury grew like a storm and her enemies trembled. But down below, in the quiet of the firelight, the 2 daughters slept peacefully for the first time since their escape, safe against the chest of a man who had no idea who they truly were. And when morning came, the galaxy would change forever. The morning sun rose slowly, spilling golden light over the small valley. Birds sang above the trees, and smoke drifted gently from the human's campfire. But his eyes were not on the sunrise. His gaze stayed on the two alien girls still curled beside him, sleeping deeply against his chest as if they had never known safety before. He barely dared to breathe. Who were they? Where had they come from? Their clothes, though torn and dirty, were made of fine silk. Their faces carried strange markings, patterns like silver etched on skin, and their hair shimmered, faintly, as though kissed by starlight. These were not ordinary children. The older one stirred first. She opened her eyes, bright and glowing, and quickly sat up when she saw the human staring. For a moment she looked ready to run. But then her younger sister shifted in her sleep, clutching his shirt tightly. The older girl froze, torn between fear and trust. "It's okay," the man said softly, raising his hands. "I won't hurt you." The older girl didn't answer. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "Where are we?" The man looked around at the forest, the river running nearby, the small wooden hut he had built with his own hands. "Far from trouble," he said simply. "This is just my home." Her eyes narrowed. She did not trust him fully yet. But hunger had softened her doubt. When the man handed her a bowl of warm stew, she took it carefully, sniffed it, then passed it to her sister, who had just woken. The younger one's small hands shook as she ate quickly, spilling broth down her chin. The man smiled faintly. "Slow down, little one, there's more." It was the first time they had heard kindness in days. For hours the girls stayed near him, though they still whispered to each other in their alien tongue. He caught fragments, words he did not understand, but the tone was clear. Fear, exhaustion, and something like relief. Finally, when the man asked their names, the older one pressed her lips tight. "We cannot say," she muttered. "That's all right," he replied. "You don't need to tell me. You're safe here, whoever you are." His calm voice carried no demand, no force. It was strange for them. All their lives, voices around them had ordered, commanded, or threatened. This human's tone was different, gentle, steady, patient. That night, the younger girl crept closer again, curling against his side as if by instinct. The older one sat nearby, still wary but unwilling to leave. The fire crackled, shadows danced on the trees, and the man felt an unfamiliar weight in his heart. He had lived alone for so long, yet now, he was not alone anymore. But deep in the galaxy, the silence of the palace had shattered. The alien queen's ships moved like thunder across the stars. Her voice echoed in every command channel. "Bring me back my daughters. Tear apart every world if you must." Planets shook under her wrath. Hunters swore loyalty, bounty posters spread like fire, and soldiers scoured villages and ports. Many whispered in terror, who had dared to steal the queen's blood? Whoever held them would surely face death. Unaware of the storm chasing them, the human carried fresh water from the river the next day. The girls followed him, their bare feet stepping carefully through the grass. They had never fetched water before. Servants had always done it for them. But now, they laughed softly, as they splashed each other, even for a moment forgetting their fear. The man turned his head. That sound, the innocent laugh of children, cut through his lonely life like light in darkness. He found himself smiling, though he knew this was dangerous. Whoever these girls were, someone would come looking for them. That evening, as the HFY stars returned to the sky, the older girl finally asked, Why are you helping us? You don't know who we are." The man stirred the fire and shrugged. "Because you needed help. That's reason enough." She stared at him, stunned. In her world, nothing was given freely. Every kindness carried a price, every word of comfort hid a blade. But this human spoke with no mask, no secret motive. The younger one tugged at her sister's arm and whispered, "I like him. He makes the night less scary." The older one wanted to argue, but her heart was already leaning toward the same truth. She lowered her eyes, fighting the tears that threatened to come. In the distance, far above in the skies, alien ships thundered closer. The hunt was spreading to every frontier. Soon the queen's wrath would cross even into human lands. But for now, in that small valley, the two lost daughters found warmth for the first time since their disappearance. They did not know if it would last. They only knew that when the fire burned low, they curled once more against the human's chest, and for a brief, fragile night they felt safe. The alien queen's command echoed across her empire like a storm. "Bring me back my daughters. Dead or alive, whoever took them will suffer." Her generals spread the order to every planet under her rule. Warships filled the skies. Hunters carried scanners that could detect even the faintest trace of her bloodline, and spies whispered in dark alleys. The entire galaxy knew now. The princesses were missing, and fear ran deeper than ever before. In crowded marketplaces, merchants closed their stalls early, afraid of being accused. In quiet villages, mothers pulled their children close. Anyone could be a suspect. Anyone could be punished. The queen's grief had become fire, and the fire spread without mercy. But on a distant, forgotten world, the human still lived quietly with the two girls. He did not know his small hut was now the center of a galactic storm. That morning he found them sitting by the river, their hands in the cool water. The younger one splashed happily, her laughter ringing like silver bells. The older one, though, still watchful, let her guard drop for a moment. "You two are healing," the man said softly as he set down a basket of fish. The older girl tilted her head. "Healing?" "Yes," he replied, smiling. "When you first came, your eyes were full of fear. Now, I see something else. A little peace." The younger sister looked up at him and whispered, "You make us feel safe." The man's heart tightened. He had lived a life of solitude, far from others, because trust was always fragile in a harsh galaxy. Yet these two fragile lives had trusted him without even knowing his name. He knew nothing about them, and still, he could not turn them away. But, miles above, a patrol ship streaked across the sky. The Queen's scouts landed nearby, their heavy boots crushing the grass as they searched. The human froze when he saw distant shadows moving at the edge of the forest. "Stay inside," he told the girls quickly. "Don't make a sound." The older one grabbed his arm. "Who are they?" "Hunters," he answered. "And they're not here for me. They're here for you." The sisters went pale. For the first time, the humans saw raw terror in their eyes. It wasn't just fear of capture. It was fear of being returned to someone far more dangerous than strangers. He hid them beneath the wooden floorboards of his hut, covering them with blankets. Their small breaths came fast and shallow. He pressed a finger to his lips. "Not a sound, you hear? I'll keep you safe." Moments later, the door shook. The hunters burst inside, tall and armored, their eyes glowing red through their masks. "You, there," the leader growled. "We've tracked unusual life signs in this sector. Have you seen anything?" The man kept his face calm. "Only the usual. Wild animals, nothing more." The hunters scanned the room. One kicked the bed aside, another sniffed the air. The human stood steady, though his hands tightened into fists. If they found the girls, he would fight, even if it cost his life. After tense minutes, the leader finally hissed. "False alarm. Move." The hunters left, their ships rising back into the sky. The man waited until the engines faded, then lifted the floorboards. The two girls crawled out trembling, tears shining in their eyes. "You didn't give us away," the older one whispered. "Of course not," he replied firmly. "You're safe here." That night, while the fire burned low, the older girl sat beside him. Her voice was quiet, almost broken. "If they take us back, we will never be free again." The man looked at her, finally realizing the truth. They weren't just lost children. They were running from something far darker. "Then I won't. Let them take you," he said. His tone was simple, but his promise was iron. The younger one leaned against him, her small fingers clutching his shirt. "You're not like the others," she murmured. "The others and always want something, but you only give." The human didn't reply. He stared into the fire, knowing the hunt was only beginning. The Queen's rage would not stop. Her armies would search every shadow, every world. Sooner or later they would find him. And when they did, he would have to decide, fight an empire or surrender the two children who had already claimed his heart. Above them, the stars glittered cold and distant, but in the quiet hut, two alien daughters slept peacefully once more, curled against the chest of the one human who had chosen to protect them against the galaxy itself. The nights grew longer, and the human's small hut became more than just a shelter. It became a hidden world of safety for the two lost daughters. Each day the man gathered food from the forest, brought water from the river, and kept the fire burning bright. And each night the two girls curled close to him, their small breaths warming the silence of his lonely home. They had stopped trembling in their sleep. They no longer woke, screaming at shadows. Slowly, the fear inside their eyes began to fade. In its place, something new grew: trust. The older girl was the first to speak openly. She sat across from him one evening, her face lit by the flames. "You are strange, human," she said softly. The man raised an eyebrow. "Strange? Why?" "Because you asked nothing of us," she answered. "Everyone we knew before, they always wanted something. Power, gold, secrets. But you give food, warmth, safety, and you never ask for a price." The man shrugged. "Your children should be safe, that's all." Her lips pressed tight as if she wanted to say more but couldn't. The younger one, however, had no fear in her heart anymore. She leaned against him, holding his arm. "Can you tell us a story?" she asked in her small voice. "A story?" he repeated, surprised. "Yes," she whispered. "Something before sleep. Mother used to tell us stories, but now—" Her voice trailed off, heavy with sadness. The man's chest ached. He stared into the fire for a moment, then nodded. "All right, a story." And so he told them tales of his childhood, of Earth's forests, of the mountains where snow fell thick and white, of rivers so wide you could not see the other side. His words were simple, but the girls listened with wide eyes, their faces glowing in the firelight. When the story ended, the younger one whispered, "I wish I could see Earth." The man smiled faintly. Maybe one day. It became a ritual. Each night he told them more stories, and each night the girls leaned closer, their eyes heavy with sleep until they finally drifted off against his chest. The bond between them deepened with every passing hour. But beyond the safety of the hut, the galaxy burned with the Queen's fury. Her ships blockaded worlds. Entire towns were searched and torn apart. Innocent families were dragged from their homes. The Queen's voice thundered in the palace halls. "Find my daughters. Bring me their thief." Generals feared her wrath. Ministers whispered of rebellion, but none dared speak against her, not while her grief was still raw and her power unmatched. One of her closest advisors dared to ask, "My queen, why such fire? If they are already gone." The queen struck the floor with her staff, the E sound echoing like thunder. "They are not gone. I feel their blood in the stars. They live. And if a human shelters them, then he will pay with his soul." Back in the forest hut, the human sharpened his blade late into the night. He had seen the patrol ships pass again. Their shadows stretched long across the valley. The net was closing. The older girl sat nearby, watching him. "You're preparing for them," she said quietly. He nodded. "They'll come again. Sooner or later." She hesitated, then whispered, "You cannot win against them. They are many. They are trained." "I don't need to win," he replied, his voice firm. "I only need to keep you safe." Her chest tightened. She had known many soldiers, many warriors in her life, but none had spoken like that. None had spoken without pride, without greed, only with determination. When she looked at him, she no longer saw just a human. She saw something unbreakable. That night, when her younger sister had already fallen asleep, she whispered something she had never said aloud. If they take us back, we will never be free again. They will lock us away in cages, keep us as tools for power. I don't want that life. I would rather stay here, with you." The man placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Then you will stay. As long as I breathe, no one will take you." Tears welled in her glowing eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She didn't want him to see her weakness, yet deep in her heart something new sparked. Hope. The bond between them was no longer just kindness. It was something stronger, something dangerous. Because if the queen herself saw her daughters curled against a human's chest, she would not forgive. She would burn worlds to ashes. But still, in that small hut, the three of them sat together by the fire. For a moment, the galaxy outside didn't matter. The hunt, the soldiers, the wrath of an empire, it all seemed far away. All that remained was a promise unspoken. They were no longer alone. The palace of the alien queen shook with her rage. For days and nights her warships had searched the skies, her soldiers had marched across worlds, and her hunters had chased every whisper of a lead. But still her daughters remained hidden. Every hour without them felt like a blade twisting in her heart. The queen stood before the massive star map that floated in the great hall. Thousands of red lines crisscrossed the galaxy, trails of her hunters, search paths of her fleets. Yet, none ended with success. Her fists tightened. "They are out there," she hissed. "I can feel their blood, and yet my empire fails me." Her generals knelt before her, trembling under her gaze. One dared to speak. "My queen, we have traced an unusual signal. Faint, but it carries the life signature of your bloodline." The queen's eyes burned like fire. "Where?" The general swallowed. "On the outer edge, near human territory." The chamber went silent. Every alien present froze. The word carried weight like a curse. Human. To most of the galaxy, humans were nothing more than scattered survivors, strong yet few in number, living on worlds no one wanted. They were unpredictable, wild, untamed. The queen's lips curled into a snarl. "A human dares. A human shelters. What belongs to me?" Her voice cracked like thunder. "Then let them burn. Send fleets. Block every world. Tear apart their villages until my daughters are found." Her ships moved like storms across the void. Markets fell quiet. Ports locked their gates, and anyone with human blood was questioned, or worse. The galaxy shook as her wrath spread wider, and the name human now carried both suspicion and doom. Back on the quiet world, the human man noticed the change in the sky. He looked up one evening to see three dark shapes moving high above the forest, their engines glowing like angry stars. Patrol ships. They were coming closer now. Inside the hut, the two girls sat close to the fire. The younger one played with small stones, trying to make patterns, but her hands shook. The older one stared into the flames, silent and worried. "They're searching harder," the man said, stepping inside. His voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. "I saw ships today, not far from here." The older girl's face paled. "Then, she knows," she whispered. "Mother knows we're alive." The younger one looked up quickly. "Mother?" she asked, her eyes wide. The older girl shook her head, pressing her lips together. But the human caught the word. His mind raced. Mother? That meant these girls were not just from any noble family. They belonged to someone powerful. He crouched beside them. "You need to tell me the truth," he said gently. "Who are you, really?" The older one hesitated. Fear filled her eyes. But when the younger sister clutched his arm and whispered, "He deserves to know," the older girl finally nodded. "We are not ordinary children," she confessed. Her voice shook. "We are daughters of the queen of the empire you fear." The words fell like heavy stones. The fire crackled, the night seemed colder, and the human's breath caught. "Daughters of the queen," That explained the silk clothes, the silver markings, the way hunters searched the skies with such fury. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he let out a slow breath. That makes sense, he muttered. No wonder they'll tear the galaxy apart to find you. The younger girl's eyes filled with tears. Will you give us back? She asked in a trembling voice. The man looked at her, then at her sister, and finally shook his head. No, you're safe here. I don't care whose daughters you are, you're children, and I promise to protect you. The older one's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, but no words came. No one had ever spoken against her mother's will before. No one had ever dared. Yet this human, a simple man with nothing, stood taller than empires in that moment. Far away, the queen stared at the star map. Her daughter's faint life signal pulsed at the edge of human territory. Her eyes glowed with both relief and rage. Relief that they were alive. Rage that they were not with her. She raised her staff high, her voice shaking the palace walls. Summon my fleet. Summon every hunter. Prepare my throne ship. I will go myself. And when I arrive, the human who shelters them will beg for death. Back in the small valley, the human sharpened his blade once more. He knew now exactly what storm was coming, and he knew he could not run, because 2 alien daughters already slept peacefully against his chest, and he would never let them go. The night was restless. The human sharpened his blade again and again, though he knew steel alone would never be enough against an empire. Still, he needed something in his hands, something to remind him that he would not stand empty when the storm arrived. Inside the hut, the 2 alien girls whispered in hushed voices. The younger one clutched a small wooden carving the man had given her, an animal from Earth she could not name. She held it as if it were a shield. The older one kept looking at the door, her ears sharp, her heart heavy. And then, just before dawn, the silence broke. Engines thundered in the sky. The trees shook, the ground trembled, and beams of light cut through the forest. Dozens of soldiers landed, their armor black and shining, their eyes glowing red through their helmets. They moved with perfect unity, spreading like shadows, surrounding the hut. The human stepped outside before they reached the door. His grip tightened on his blade, his shoulders squared. He looked like a single tree standing against a storm. The lead soldier raised his weapon. Human, by command of the queen, surrender the children you hide, refuse, and you will die. The man did not move. They're not your prisoners. They're children. They are not yours, the soldier hissed. They are royal blood, and you are nothing. The human's jaw tightened. Then this nothing is the only wall between them and your cages. The soldiers moved closer. Weapons gleamed in the pale light. But just as the first soldier stepped forward, the hut door burst open. The older girl ran out, her hands spread wide. Stop, she screamed. Don't hurt him. The soldiers froze. Every helmet turned toward her glowing eyes, her silver-marked face. The signal was unmistakable. She was the queen's daughter. The younger one followed, clutching her sister's hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, she cried. He saved us, don't hurt him. The human's heart sank. He had wanted them hidden, safe, unseen, but now they stood in the open between him and the queen's soldiers. The leader lowered his weapon slowly. Princesses, his voice was almost reverent. You live. The queen will be pleased. But the older girl shook her head fiercely. No, we will not go back. Not if you hurt him. The soldiers glanced at each other in confusion. They were trained for war, not for the cries of children. One of them finally spoke. Princess, your place is with your mother. No, the younger one shouted. She ran back to the human and threw her arms around him. My place is here, the older one hesitated only a moment before joining her sister. She stood tall in front of the human, her small frame trembling but unyielding. If you want him dead, you'll have to kill us first. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The soldiers, armored and armed, faced 2 trembling children and 1 defiant human. The balance of power was absurd, and yet none of them moved, because deep in their hearts, even the soldiers felt it. This was no ordinary human. He stood calm, while facing certain death, his arms steady, his eyes clear. And the daughters of their queen chose him, not them. The leader's hand shook on his weapon. "The queen will decide," he muttered finally. "Not us." He signaled to the others. They stepped back, forming a circle, their ships ready to lift. But their message was clear. The human would not escape. The queen herself would come, as the soldiers vanished into the sky. Silence returned to the valley. The human sheathed his blade slowly. His chest rose and fell, heavy with relief and dread. The older girl looked up at him, her voice shaking. "You stood against them. For us." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "I told you. No one takes you while I breathe." The younger one buried her face against his chest, sobbing quietly. "She's coming, isn't she? Mother will come." The man stared into the dark horizon, where the queen's throne ship would soon appear, massive and terrible. He nodded slowly. "Yes, she's coming." And he knew the next battle would not be against soldiers. It would be against the most feared ruler in the galaxy. But still, he tightened his arms around the girls, because in that moment, they were his, and no queen, no empire, no fleet would make him let go without a fight. The sky split open with thunder. From above, a massive shadow fell across the valley. It was the queen's throne ship, so large it blotted out the stars, its engines roaring like a storm. The ground shook, trees bent under the force of its landing. Thrusters and every creature in the forest fled in terror. The human stood outside his hut, blade in hand. The two girls pressed close against him. His heart pounded, but his stance was steady. He knew this was the end. There was no hiding anymore. Ship's ramp lowered with a hiss, and soldiers in black armor marched out, forming two long lines. Between them, the alien queen appeared. She was taller than any of her warriors, her crown glowing faintly with energy, her eyes burning with fire. Every step she took made the soldiers bow their heads lower. She was fury made flesh, grief made power. Her gaze locked on the two girls instantly. For a heartbeat, her cold mask cracked. Relief flashed in her eyes. Her daughters were alive. But then she saw where they stood, pressed against the chest of a human. Her lips curled into a snarl. "You," she spat, her voice echoing through the valley. "You dare steal what is mine?" The human didn't flinch. "They came to me. I only kept them safe." "Safe?" the queen roared. "From me? I am their blood. I am their life." The older girl stepped forward, her voice shaking but strong. "No, mother. You are their queen. But you are not our safety. Not anymore." The queen froze. The soldiers shifted uneasily, as if they had never heard such words spoken to her. The younger daughter clung tighter to the human's shirt. "He fed us when we starved. He warmed us when we were cold. He held us when we cried. Where were you, mother?" The queen's eyes widened. For once, her iron control faltered. Her daughters' voices cut deeper than any blade. She raised her hand, power glowing at her fingertips. "Step away from him now." But the older girl shook her head. She spread her arms wide, standing in front of the human. "If you hurt him, you hurt us. If you kill him, you kill what's left of us." The valley fell silent. Even the queen's soldiers hesitated, their grips on their weapons loosening. The human finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You rule empires, queen. You command fleets, but in all your power you could not give your daughters what they truly needed. Love. That's all I gave. Nothing more." His words carried no arrogance, only truth. And the truth hit harder than her wrath. The queen's breath shook. Her daughter's eyes, filled with trust, glowing with safety, were not turned toward her. They were turned toward a man she had called nothing. She stepped closer, her crown catching the firelight. For the first time in her reign, she felt powerless. Her daughters leaned into the human, one on each side, curled against him just as they had done every night since their escape. They looked peaceful, protected, and the queen realized with horror and awe that this human had done what her entire empire could not. The soldiers bowed their heads lower, waiting for her command. Kill the human, and it would be done. Spare him, and the galaxy would never see her the same way again. The queen's lips trembled. She raised her hand again, then slowly lowered it. Her voice was not thunder this time. It was a whisper. How did you do what I could not? The human looked at her steadily. Because I didn't see princesses, I saw children. Children who needed someone. Anyone. The queen's chest rose and fell. For a long moment she stood frozen between rage and grief. Then she turned sharply, her cape swirling behind her. Take us home, she ordered her soldiers. But her voice was softer, weaker. The daughters didn't move. They pressed closer to the human, refusing to leave his side. The queen saw it, and though her pride burned, she did not force them. Not this time. For the first time in her reign, the galaxy saw its queen not as unshakable, but as a mother, broken by the sight of her children choosing another's chest over her throne. The soldiers led her back toward the ship. The daughters stayed in the valley, clinging to the human, their protector. And as the throne ship rose into the sky, the queen whispered to herself words she had never spoken aloud. Perhaps the humans are not as weak as we believed. In that moment, the galaxy began to change, because one human with nothing but his arms and his heart had shown the worth of humanity to the most powerful queen alive.